Surprise! Servus Freunde, my name is Jimmy Cage and I don't know if you remember, but 3 years ago Universal tried to launch their very own shared universe. After the huge success of Marvel, for many studios it seemed to be the best prospect to stay lucrative for a long period of time by turning their franchises into shared universes as well. But not only do you have to earn a shared universe by making some good films first, you also have to know what kind of material you have and what's the best way of bringing it back into the light. Alex Kurtzman's 2017 The Mummy, starring Tom Cruise, was definitely not the right movie to start their so-called dark universe, which was supposed to include all their classic monster characters, from Dracula, Frankenstein, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, to the creature from the Black Lagoon and of course the Invisible Man. In my honest opinion, their new Mummy movie was almost unwatchable, and with 3 out of 10 it's one of the lowest ratings here on the channel, back when I could have played the new incarnation of the werewolf. The movie was a total mess, and instead of leaning into the horror angle, it was aimed to be this fantastical team-up action-adventure, stuffed with allusions to follow-up movies before they even made one good one to begin with. It also costed $125 million to make, and while it made about $400 million at the box office, its reception by both critics and audience was pretty bad. Universal's newest reimagination of The Invisible Man is pretty much the opposite. It was written and directed by Whannell and produced by Jason Blum. And if you're familiar with Blumhouse Productions, you know that they mostly specify on horror and that they always try to keep a very low budget to make a good profit. And while the last Mummy movie's budget was about $125 million, The Invisible Man was under 10. It also stands completely on its own, without any unnecessary hints at future projects, and most important, they actually did come up with a fresh new spin that's actually fitting their source material. The story is of course based on H.G. Wells' 1897 original novel, but besides its invisible title character, it doesn't really have that much to do with it. Of course, there were a lot of different movie adaptations over the years, and this one focuses much more on the victim's perspective and not really on the Invisible Man himself. It's not at all a film about the wondrous possibilities about being invisible. It's not a playful movie and there's almost no humor to be found. Instead, the premise is used for a lean and mean domestic abuse and toxic relationship horror thriller. I don't think it's great, but it's a very solid and well done tense little movie. And it also has a very strong direction, a very specific visual identity that's established with the very first shot and doesn't fade away until the very end. It begins by showing us how Cecilia, played by Elizabeth Moss, is finally able to get away from her abusive boyfriend. It's a very well crafted sequence, and without any words it tells us everything we need to know about their relationship. 2 weeks pass, and to Cecilia's surprise, it turns out that Adrian, that's the name of her now ex-boyfriend, has apparently committed suicide. Now, of course, the movie is titled The Invisible Man, and fortunately the filmmakers know that the audience knows that this very likely is not true. So it doesn't waste too much time playing around with the possibility that he might still be alive, and Cecilia comes to terms with it pretty quickly. Of course, she's not really able to convince the people around her, and I thought the film did a pretty good and believable job of reversing the roles of perpetrator and victim in the eyes of Cecilia's family and friends. Harriet Dyer, but especially Aldous Hodge, are very good in the supporting roles, but this is definitely Elizabeth Moss's film. She is remarkable as this young woman who has been under the control of a horrible man for far too long. It's a film about control, of having someone be in charge of your every move, of being under control by a sociopathic narcissist who thinks he has the right to determine the life of someone else. And it's about the fear of finally escaping that toxic situation, to break free, regain control about your own life, and making the people around you believe who the perpetrator is and what he is capable of. With these themes on its mind, it very much reminded me of the Harvey Weinsteins and Jeffrey Epsteins of the world, and I have to say that this perfectly fits the idea of the Invisible Man. The villain in this movie, who is this super rich guy with his secluded mansion, has so much control that he's literally invisible and puts everything exactly where he needs it to be. Director Leigh Whannell is able to portray the anxiety that comes with that. Not knowing when you are being watched, when you are being stalked. The film can be highly suspenseful at times, and while you expect it to escalate immediately, it's actually a rather slow but tense build-up. There might be a few instances where you have to suspend your disbelief a little bit more, but after all, despite its serious nature, this is still a genre movie. An absolute highlight is a long and terrifying sequence at a mental institution, and a huge chunk of it is done in one continuous take. And speaking about the camera, they really know how to frame each shot to let just big empty space become menacing in itself. Like our protagonist Cecilia, whose nickname is just C by the way, which of course refers to her ability to be the only one who sees the truth, and yet who is also not able to actually see her tormentor. Like her, we are constantly expecting Adrian to be around, and this creates constant threat. Now, I do have to say that the sequence in the mental institution is almost a little bit too good for the sake of the film, because the very ending has me a little bit torn. Without spoiling any of it, I can say that I expected something more in the vein of that mentioned sequence, something a bit more true to the horror thriller genre. I absolutely get the idea behind the finale, and you can argue why it totally fits thematically, but with a movie this long I was looking forward to a more classical showdown. It's almost a bit as if the movie really steps on the brake just when it gained this great momentum. And The Invisible Man definitely felt a little bit too long for my own taste, and it didn't completely deliver on its promises for me. So in German I'd say, Der Unsichtbare zeigt, wie man einen klassischen Stoff spannend und frisch neu erzählen kann. Toll gespielt, beklemmend in Szene gesetzt und thematisch gradlinig erzählt. Ein ziemlich solider Horror-Thriller, der Fans des Genres sicher nicht enttäuschen sollte. I give The Invisible Man 7 out of 10. It's more like 6.9, but I don't do that.
Surprise.
Alright, that's it like always. Comment below and let me know what you think about The Invisible Man. And also let me know what is your favorite movie about an invisible man. You can hit me up on Twitter, Instagram and Letterboxd simply at TheJimmyCage. And you can also check out our newly launched Patreon at patreon.com/TheJimmyCage for some extra content. And if you enjoyed this episode, please give us a thumbs up, share, subscribe, whatever you like. And make sure you hit that bell for all we have to tell.